Next, if you have Suzannah Koilpillai, I'm sorry, I'm Vice President of Growth and Partnership Outreach.
Outreach, yes. Suzannah Koilpillai,
Suzannah
thank you.
Koilpillai,
And you definitely get a pass on that one. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, honorable senators. It's so nice to be here today. We do have a presentation. Is there any? Ah, beautiful. You know, Outreach is an education nonprofit. We're a national nonprofit, though I do live here in Atlanta. And we are really focused on transforming STEM and science education in this country. We know that if elementary students are not exposed to engaging STEM and science opportunities from an early age, that can effectively block them from STEM careers. You know, research shows us that that transformational STEM and science opportunities are what puts kids on the path to dynamic STEM careers. So there is a gap in this country in the workforce pipeline in STEM careers. STEM careers are some of the fastest growing and highest paying jobs out there. But we also know that women and people of color are underrepresented in these fields, yet the fields are demanding greater diversity. We look here at the map of Georgia, and this is showing you the cluster of schools that are STEM certified. As you can see, there are not a lot in our rural communities. Rural communities lack access to STEM opportunities, but we know that kids have to have that foundational knowledge in elementary school or they can be blocked. And so the time is now for us to make a change. So why am I talking to you about STEM and science careers in an outdoor learning committee? Well, it's because, you know, outdoor learning is that path. So when we look at fourth grade test scores in school, in Title I schools, in our kids that have the highest need, 78% of fourth graders are not proficient in science. That means 22% of our fourth graders are proficient. That is a staggering number. We also know that 1/3 of elementary teachers feel prepared to teach science, which means 2/3 of our teachers in elementary don't. As I'm sure some of you know, most elementary teachers are what we call generalists, meaning they have to teach all of the subjects. Because of testing, they become very focused on math and ELA, as they should be. That is critically important. But imagine if we could increase the quality and quantity of science instruction so that kids have hands-on opportunities, not just in science, but also in math, ELA, and social studies. Suddenly you're lifting the boat across all contents and improving student outcomes. Students right now in elementary receive on average 18 minutes of science instruction per day. That's a big problem, right? My kids, they don't even get science every day. They alternate between social studies and science. So my kids go weeks without any kind of science instruction. Yet we know that by 6th grade, many students have started to determine their career trajectory. So middle school and high school is too late to provide these kinds of opportunities. So outdoor learning is one of our answers to filling this STEM gap and getting kids engaged in STEM and science early on. Research shows us, as we've been talking about, that outdoor learning and hands-on experiences improve student outcomes. It accelerates learning. Right now, we're all talking about COVID learning loss. Districts are not focused on remediation. They're focused on accelerating learning, and outdoor learning is a key piece of doing that. We know that when you can get kids outdoors and provide them with authentic, real-world experiences that are relevant to them, that's how you deepen the learning across subject matters. And then, as is so important right now, outdoor learning also promotes wellness, social emotional learning, these mental health things that are another thing that districts are so focused on right now. And of course, when we look at the data, safety, right? COVID is not going away, unfortunately. And so why not have our kids outdoors in a safer environment when we know about all the other benefits? So how can we do this, right? I mean, we talk to teachers all the time. We work with teachers. That's what we do. Teachers want to teach outdoors. They know that their kids are more engaged. They know that they're inspired. They know that kids that have the most trouble inside of a classroom can shine in an outdoor environment. So what do schools need? You know, how can we all get this done together? The first thing they need is funding, right? We're at a pivotal moment in this country with all of the different federal funding coming down, particularly through ESSER. There have been 3 rounds of ESSER funding. And as many of you probably know, this funding has to be used in 3 years. And so districts are thinking about how can we make these investments in a way that's sustainable. And unfortunately, it doesn't mean we can pay teachers a lot more or we can hire more teachers, because what are you going to do with those salaries in 3 years? Schools and districts need the funding and the resources to implement outdoor learning. And what are they going to use that funding on? Teacher training is the key. Like I said, teachers want to take kids outside for learning, but they have to have the strategies and the skills and the resources to know how to teach their standards outside. Teachers don't have time to do extra things, right? Districts and superintendents are not going to get on board and get excited about programs that aren't going to impact academics. So if we want to all do this on a big scale together, it has to be aligned to academics. Teachers have to know how to get their kids outdoors to teach those standards. So teacher training is key. And then the outdoor environments themselves, if we can work with districts throughout this state to add additional outdoor classrooms, outdoor learning features, you know, imagine what we can all do together. And this is happening. It is happening across the country. I mentioned we're a national organization. We've partnered just recently with the Office of the State Superintendent in Washington, D.C. We're designing 80 outdoor classrooms across campuses in the District of Columbia this year. We're working with the North Carolina State Legislature to figure out how can we partner to get expanded outdoor learning access to schools in the rural communities. So we can do this together. As you can see, you know, I mentioned we're a national organization. And so here's some of the impact. Outteach is going to be working this year in 25 districts across the state of Georgia. And so there's such opportunity to impact teachers and students right now, re-inspire our kids following the impacts of the last year and a half. And so, you know, I'm not going to read that slide to you. Instead, I'm going to tell you just a very brief story about how outdoor learning can really happen in a school and in a classroom. If you take a 5th grade science standard, one my son just learned, one of the 5th grade science standards is around constructive and destructive forces, and they learn about erosion. In a traditional elementary classroom in 5th grade, the teacher will most likely stand at the front of the classroom, talk about constructive and destructive forces. They might show a video of the Grand Canyon, or they might show a video of a beach and the waves crashing over the sand, right? And they might tell the students, you know, this is what destructive forces are. Well, imagine if 90, 95, maybe 100% of the students in that classroom have never been to the Grand Canyon, or they don't go to the beach for spring break, because most of the schools that we serve are high need schools, Title I schools. And so how is an elementary student going to form that connection to what's being told to them if they have it's not relevant to them at all? Imagine then if you're in a school and that teacher has been trained in outdoor learning, and maybe they have some resources in their outdoor classroom. And imagine instead of showing those videos, they take their kids outside and they talk to them about posing a problem. And the kids work together, and they might have an earth science station that has some sand and other outdoor materials. Imagine if those kids collaborate and work together and they build a mountain, a small mountain. And then the teacher gives them a little bit of water, and they can pour that water on that mountain, and they can watch the little stream come down and watch the sand wash away. And maybe they pour it just a little bit and it goes slower. And then they pour it really, you know, they dump it all on there and it all falls down. You know, imagine the difference that that makes in understanding such an abstract concept of destructive forces and how the Grand Canyon got formed over millions of years. Here's the really cool thing. The other thing you've done when you're able to do that is you've just leveled the playing field for the students in that class, right? The teacher doesn't have to rely on experiences that that student may or may not have outside of school. So you've closed the experience gap. That's how we get our youngest kids on those pathways to fulfill STEM careers, and our kids that don't have those experiences outside of school to see themselves as a scientist, an inventor, an astronaut. That's how we diversify our STEM pipeline. That's really how we keep Georgia, growing in our STEM jobs and keeping our kids here and flourishing, right? That's why outdoor learning is important. And that's the opportunity we all have together. Like I said, superintendents aren't going to get on board with this if we don't show academic outcomes. And so OutTeach, for example, measures things like teacher effectiveness and student engagement, because we know that teachers are the single most important in-school factor that impacts student outcomes, and engaged students achieve more. So we have to show those connections in order to make this happen on a large scale. So, there's some amazing talent in this room. I loved hearing your comments. I think, it's just so important to give our students these resources. And this was important before COVID, right? I mean, this is how students should learn. But we all, we can use this moment in time to re-engage our kids in learning, to inspire our kids, and do it in a sustainable way. If we're training our teachers now, providing these resources now for the next 3 years, you've just built that teacher's capacity for the rest of their career. You don't have to keep paying for it over and over. So there's a real, there's a real logic to doing this now. That we can really impact our kids for really decades. Thank you. Any questions?
Miss Suzannah?
Yeah. Suzanna's just fine.
Forgive me for using the first name.
It's totally fine.
Are you, do you partner with all of the systems in Muskogee, such as Muskogee County, Fulton County? Are you already in Muskogee County as well?
I do not think we are there actually right now, but legislators, as I mentioned, in North Carolina and state departments of education. So we work
in what way, excuse me, in what way with the legislatures?
So in North Carolina, we're actually looking at a line item in their budget to bring, OutTeach programs. So for example, both our teacher training and then the actual outdoor spaces themselves to different schools and rural communities.
Okay. Can you give me just a very short version of, you would go in Muskogee County, and how would you set that up with Superintendent David Lewis as an example? Sure.
So, what we do is work on training teachers throughout the school year. So when you look at teacher training and professional development, job embedded coaching is what is most impactful in shifting teacher practice. And so when we're working at the district level, for example, we might be training all of their 3rd, 4th, and 5th teachers in outdoor learning and really in shifting their practice. And I could talk all day about this, but really shifting to an inquiry-based model that is student-led, because that's what develops their 21st century skills. So we're coaching their teachers throughout the school year, doing things like model lessons where the teacher can watch our coaches teach their students in the outdoor environment, teach specific standards. We do observations where we're giving feedback to teachers saying, hey, I really liked how you did this thing. Your students were engaged, or maybe they weren't engaged, and here's how you could have shifted what you were doing. We do planning sessions with them as well so that they can lesson plan. And then we're also putting in actual outdoor spaces onto their campuses. So like we have landscape architects on our team that are experts in outdoor education spaces particularly. So we work really collaboratively with districts and principals to build those spaces in a way that's really relevant to the immediate community.
Yeah, and that was interesting. I used to serve on the school board in Columbus.
Okay, yep.
And you had this concept that all children can learn, right?
Absolutely.
But in the midst of that, you had this seemingly drive to make it more and more narrow for kids to get out and play and cram more academic stuff in. How do you sort of balance that and turn that ship around towards where they're thinking about, integrating it more with the outdoor aspect of it?
Yeah, so that's why I talk about academics so much, is it has to be aligned to standards in order for leadership at a district to say, like, yes, let's do this on a large scale, right? Because right now the way that many schools work is their subjects are very siloed. So you might have 90 minutes for math, and then you've got 60 minutes for ELA, and then 20 minutes for science on some days. And so if you can show a teacher, because they're elementary teachers, right? They have their kids all day. So they're not going from class to class or different subjects like in middle school. So if you can show a teacher, okay, here's a science standard that you're working on, but here's how you bring your literacy standard that you're also working on into this outdoor lesson. That's how you show them how to do these things really sort of methodically and strategically. But again, so it's not something extra, because that's the challenge you see when you talk to districts is they'll say, oh, my teachers don't, they're so busy, they don't want to have to handle another thing, or they don't have time to learn another thing. That's why we work really in a job embedded way. So there isn't, they don't have to hire subs, they don't have to change their schedule. It's really embedded into the regular school day, because that's how you get it done. And that's how you really make sure that it's impacting academics.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next.
We do. We partner